Welcome to the Theory of DFS podcast. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blender Ed, Blender HD if you want to follow me on Twitter, and the co-author of the Theory of DFS, 15-hour audio DFS Masterclass. You can pick up at theoryofdfs.com. Join with me, as usual, Neil Orfield from Stochastic, the High Stakes Podcast, On the Contrary Show, the NFL Strategy Show, the NFL Everything Show. Last week, I was under the weather. I'm still kind of a little bit sick. I don't feel bad. It's just a lingering cough or whatever. If we did the show last week, I would have coughed. You would have actually had the opportunity to talk more than me.
Yeah, we should have done it. I would have just been talking over you all the time.
Right.
You would have tried to talk over me, and then just phlegm would come out, and I just keep going.
Right. I'd have to hit the cough by my mute button. You'd see me doing that all the time.
Yeah,
while you talk.
Yeah. Are you growing out a beard, Blender?
No, I just haven't shaved.
Okay, I don't think I've ever seen you with this much stubble on your face.
Yeah, I think this is like 4 days.
It looks like you could grow out a beard though. You've got the facial hair for it.
It's too itchy. It's too.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Right.
well, it's only until it's actually in. That's the transitional phase. It's itchy. Mine doesn't. I don't even feel mine anymore.
Right. I just right. The only reason I haven't shaved is because I did soccer on Saturday, MMA on Saturday, then football, and you don't have the time. We had that
Yeah.
whole thing in MMA. I don't know if you played the MMA slate with the fight
I did.
the fight that all of a sudden at 15 minutes after lock, like the line moved like ridiculously.
So I haven't read about that. I've seen that on Twitter that there's clearly something a little fishy going on there. It was the Minner fight, which was supposed to be kind of a volatile fight. I kind of had a lot of that fight. I think I had more of the Minner side though. I don't know. From what it sounded like to me, and I don't watch, don't really know anything about these fighters, but from the things I listened to, it sounded like Minner's a guy who goes for the big shot early, but that makes it more volatile. So he's either going to get it or he's exposing himself. So I was like, I like that. That's what I like in fights. So I took both sides, but didn't end up getting anything.
The past 2 weeks in MMA have been really weird. Like the week before, like almost all the chalk failed, and like I doubled my money even with like having no more than 4 wins in a lineup.
Yeah.
And it was sort of last week we only had 11 fights because the Parisian fight got canceled. I only played 6 lineups, and I had the loser of both the first 2 fights in all of my lineups. So like all of my lineups had at least one loss, if not both of them, and I still ended up making over 2.5x.
Did you really?
The money anyway. I mean, because I had Lemos in 5 out of 6 lineups, and I had Candelario as my other underdog, and because of the fact that no underdog won other than Lemos, Candelario at 35 points was actually the highest scoring underdog. So
Yeah.
like that, having the 35 points there, like that's fine. And then I have 100 points out of everyone else in my lineup, and like it's like
Yeah.
like
And that's the beauty of playing fewer lineups. You don't need to win. You just need to min cash. If you're playing fewer lineups, you can make money without, if,
But I
if I
wasn't
had
even
played.
mid cashing. I mean, I think I came in like third in like one of the single entry contests because I had like
Yeah, I suppose because there were no underdogs, no cheap people winning. So yeah, the 35 points was enough in that case.
right. So
By the time that final fight happened, I had left. We had a dinner party on Saturday, and I was out of it, so I wasn't even paying attention at that point. But I was like, oh, I think I had solo like 56th place or something like that in the contest, but I was still like 40 points out, so didn't really have a huge shot at winning.
yeah, I'm just it's one of those things that after 2 fights, I'm rooting for. Hopefully, it's only a small loss, and then it's like, oh, okay, I actually win money. Like that's always a nice feeling of like, oh,
Yeah,
actually, oh, I actually could make some money. Oh, that's pretty good. Right?
yeah,
NFL,
take that.
NFL. I had my best week in GPPs in NFL. I played 16 lineups. Came in 16th in the power sweep for 2K. The and at least hey Neil, at least we didn't get a week where like the cash lineup was okay. It's 7 million
True.
points. At least
Yeah.
you didn't get that.
No. We had a lot of kind of fine plays were winning. None of them were like the players that I was super high on. Justin Fields, Devontae Adams, Joe Mixon. They were all plays that I was like, if I get 2 around the field, that's fine with me. I wasn't like trying to get to more of them, but I also understood why all of them were good enough plays. I wasn't like these guys are horrible plays. I didn't have any lineups I think that had all 3 of Fields, Mixon, and Devontae Adams, and it was like you really needed at least definitely Mixon and Fields. Devontae Adams maybe was optional. I don't even know if he was in the Millie because they had Tyreek Hill.
Right.
So maybe he wasn't. But yeah, there were.
Yeah, but
You need to at least mix in the
I had Mixon
fields.
Adams lineups. I didn't have the Fields part. That was
Oh
the main
yeah,
thing that I didn't have. Right, your lineups. I'm looking in the Millie, like you, like obviously I'm playing for the power sweeps and the spies and the red zones, which are like 5,000 or less or 1,000 or less. So I don't have to get off the board. But always I look at your lineups and I'm like, geez, like you had guys that like in my 16 lineups I've like literally zero of whatsoever. But I mean, like we talked about last time, like you look foolish until you're not.
yeah.
Like have you always played NFL this contrarian?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, okay.
I'm actually. I think I play less contrarian now than I used to. Like
Really? Do you consider
I
this
mean, I
less
used to play.
contrarian?
Well, I mean,
Dude,
did
you
I
had
play anybody that's
22%
really?
AJ Dillon at 1.5% ownership.
Yeah, that was. I thought AJ Dillon was going to be like. That was maybe a little bit more contrarian. I was shooting for somewhere in the 15% range with AJ Dillon. I also thought Antonio Gibson. I thought one of these guys was going to likely have a big game. With JD McKissick out, I thought Antonio Gibson would have a great game. I also thought AJ Dillon. People were just, just assuming that Aaron Jones is going to be the guy. So you get AJ Dillon at an ownership discount, which turned out to be true, 1.5% owned. But I don't mind going well over the field on a guy when I think they have a real path to going off. And I thought AJ Dillon, he has weeks where he nearly splits the workload with Aaron Jones. And I thought this could be a week potentially where the Packers just don't need to throw the ball. Like the previous week, they had run the ball a lot. They didn't really need to, I thought they weren't going to really need to throw the ball a lot against the Lions. I thought they would be in a great game script to let's just run the ball down their throats. And AJ Dillon, certainly a capable guy. And then, of course, he gets stuffed twice on the goal line. Aaron Rodgers throws multiple interceptions on the goal line. It was just did not go the way I wanted it to in that Packers game. So didn't work out, but he had the goal line opportunities. He had plenty of the workload, just didn't do anything with it.
Right, just that I'm not used to taking like this. Even when I play large field contests, like this heavy. I mean, you still had some of the chalkier pieces in. I mean, it's like, but I mean, like cousin stacks. I mean, you went off the board, and
Yeah.
me, like obviously, I'm not playing for the millie, so like, I understand. Like, I'm not going here and like, oh, Neil, you're playing insane. It's like, no, I get it completely. It's just that, like, to build so many lineups that are like totally off the board. Like I at least mix in some or whatever. Like we take a look at even like the running backs. Like you still have like Stevenson, Etienne. You're under on these guys. You still have plenty of Aaron Jones.
Right.
You still have Eckler. You still got like I was way over on Kenny Walker and Joe Mixon. I mean that definitely helped me.
Yeah, I regretted my Joe Mixon stand. I mean, I didn't really take a stand. I was trying to be, close to the field, and I ended up getting less and less Joe Mixon as I was getting to more other players. James Conner was another player that I was like right at the end. Maybe I should get. We have confirmation that he's going to play now. Nobody's going to play him. He's in a great matchup, and we've seen James Conner have huge games. I don't know. It doesn't even look like he got that much, but I was getting less and less Joe Mixon as the day went on, and of course that was regrettable.
Right, like you're just so much more spread out. I mean, obviously I'm building 16 lineups. How much spread out can I really be? Like I mean, even in my 16 lineups, I played 1, 2, 5. I played 9 different stacks in 16 lineups. But the thing is that for my like running back exposure, all my rule was for running backs was don't play Eckler, Etienne, and Stevenson together. Like if I don't play them together, I could still play them, just don't play them together. And that's why I got Mixon and Walker more. But I still had 3 running back builds, and I was building, okay, here's my Carr lineup. Carr, Adams, Moreau. And every lineup had a tight end attached to the quarterback. So it's like Carr, Adams, Moreau, Christian Kirk. Right? And then 3 running backs, as long as they're not all 3. So it would be Mixon, Walker, Aaron Jones. Okay, that's fine. Or Etienne, Stevenson, and Deonta Foreman. I had in like 1 or 2 lineups. So like, I paired the Deonta Foreman with the Panthers defense. So it's like if I'm going to play the Panthers defense at chalk, I'm going to correlate Foreman with him, or like something like that. But like my best lineup was a Lawrence lineup, 216. That's the one that came in 16th in the power sweep. So I was rooting for give me Lawrence, give me a Lawrence to Engram touchdown, because the score that won that contest was 240. So it's not like I didn't need all that much, but that was my Lawrence, Engram, Cook, Adams. Then I have Walker, Stevenson, Mixon, Josh Palmer one off, Dolphins defense or something at 1%, and I'm like, okay, that's a lineup. It's like I have 5% owned guys in there, a 10% owned guy in there. So it's like some of the guys on your list. I mean, Khalil Herbert. I'm like,
I mean, he was in a good matchup.
Hines. I'm like, why? Why am I? I mean, just like why?
I didn't play a lot of Nyheim Hines.
I know,
I think I included him in
but here's
some.
the question, Neil, and this is a question that people will ask, right? They probably asked on your stochastic shows, and I know the answer is that it's lineups, not players. That it's diversification, not like there's how big of a player pool do you have? Like it's not an answerable question. It's like you could build a plus EV lineup with virtually any player that has a reasonable projection of any type, right? Is going to take a decent amount of snaps. I mean, obviously a guy that projects for 2 points, probably you're not playing. But anyone that's somewhere in the ballpark that you could build. But even from a projection standpoint, like do you feel as if you're too diversified? And do you think, okay, because it's not a strategy question. That's why I have to frame it this way. Of like, you can build a lineup with any. If you want to build Jamal Williams lineup, go build a Jamal Williams lineup. You have some of them.
Yeah.
Do you believe that you would be better off from a risk of ruin standpoint, from a exploiting the edge versus being more diversified? Is if instead of saying like, well, instead of having 2.7% Nyheim Hines, I just take that money, that 5,500, and just have a little bit more AJ Dillon at 5,700. Like instead of having 4.7% Brian Robinson at 5,400, you're just like, well, I'm just gonna have I'm gonna add that to Cordell Patterson for 400 more, Deion Jackson or and just like instead of going way down the list. Like, I'm building 16 lineups. I'm playing smaller field stuff. So I feel like, dude, if Antonio Gibson, if Michael, no, like, let's say Michael Carter, he was 1.2% owned in the Millie, which means in the power sweep, he was under 1% owned. That if Michael Carter put up a 30-point game, it's quite possible that it doesn't even matter. Like,
true.
There's so few lineups that even have him in there, and they still have to fit all the other stuff in to beat me. That instead of me saying I'll take a shot on Michael Carter, like why don't I just have another Ramondre Stevenson lineup? Like as long as the ownership fits it, like what?
I get what you're saying. Like why am I going too off the board? Am I playing losing EV by spreading out more? And I think the answer is actually probably yes. I actually talked about this on last night. I did the Showdown show, and I think I said refer to myself as I think that in that way I'm sort of a nit. I'm it's a FOMO thing. Like I feel like I need to play a little bit of all of these guys, and instead of just playing more of the guys that I really like, I play a few here and there of guys that I'm like I could see it. I play guys that I'm like I feel like if this guy goes off, I'm going to be kicking myself because I can see a scenario where Nyheim Hines has a big game, or AJ Dillon. I obviously, as you say, I took a bigger stand on AJ Dillon. I felt more strongly about that one. I thought the matchup was great.
But Neil, that's the question I'm asking. Of like, even when I'm building my 16 lineups, for instance, even it doesn't matter. Like in NBA, I'll build 60 lineups. The number of lineups doesn't really matter. But as far as my allocation is that like I look at it and I go, like in my 16 lineups, I played 0 Tyreek Hill. You know why? Because I wanted to play Devontae Adams at single-digit ownership. So any lineup that Tyreek, and I wasn't playing Fields and I wasn't playing Tua, right? So like, I'm like, okay, if I was playing Fields or Tua, I can understand having Tyreek Hill in there because it's in the same game. But if I'm making bets on this Jags-Raiders game, and I think a 6% owned Adams is for his 2 points lower projection is a better play than a 15% on Tyreek Hill. Like in a lineup that I could fit an $8,500 wide receiver, like why don't I just play Devontae Adams and spend the $400 on whatever the defense that you move up from there? Because I believe that in a vacuum, the Adams play, if you want to call it, is better for my lineups in general. That, like, why don't I just play more of, like, if you would have told me that you were going to play 35% of A.J. Dillon and you cut out, like, 6 of the running backs that you have, like, 2 or 3% of, I almost feel like if that was your stance, like,
Yeah.
why don't
Take
you
a stand on the one player instead of trying a little bit. Yeah, no, I do think that there is merit to that conversation. I think that I might be spreading it out too much by playing all these guys, and it really is. It's more of a FOMO thing. It's less about my EV as it is like I want to play a little bit of all these guys because like this is a guy that I could see it. I could see this guy getting 1% ownership and scoring 30 fantasy points. Like there are
Yeah,
a
but
lot
it's
of
not
a
going to be
number of those
necessary.
guys.
But the
I
point
know,
that
I
I'm making
know.
is that it may not even
Yeah.
be necessary.
I get that it's not necessary, but it's not always about what's necessary. It's also about, if a guy who is not owned in a tournament at all scores 100 fantasy points, that player is not necessary. Obviously, if nobody has him, he's not necessary. But if you have him, that's a huge help for you. So, like, the fact that it's not necessary isn't the be all end all. Yes, that is. I get what you're saying. That is an important factor of if nobody else is playing him, you don't need to play them. But if there are guys that I think maybe have a greater chance of hitting a real ceiling than their ownership, then I feel like I want to get to some of those players. So I think that's why but I agree with you the question you're asking, I think it's a good question. And I think that I probably am sacrificing some EV by playing some of these guys. Like I think Nyheim Hines, I could have not played Nyheim Hines this weekend. I thought that there was a possibility, he's the new shiny toy. He's in this new offense. Who knows? Maybe they're going to get him involved a lot. But I didn't really need to take a chance on Nyheim Hines. I didn't feel as strongly about him as AJ Dillon, as you can see in my reflected in my ownership. So yeah, I probably could have sacrificed my Nyheim Hines shares. I do play some guys that I'm like, yeah, I probably didn't need to really play him, but it's an interesting question. It's a milli maker. I take a lot of chances, but I think there is some merit to thinking about should I just be condensing among the guys that are contrarian, but I feel strongly about that. I really want to just take bigger stands on some of these guys than I already am. I think that is certainly a good question.
Right. I don't think it's a strategy question. To me, from even just a lineup perspective of like imagine, Neil, you had a lineup that projected for X at Y ownership. And you believe that for the milli maker, the Y ownership is contrarian enough.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So at this moment right now, you have one slot left in your lineup, right? It's a wide receiver slot, and you have X salary, whatever Z salary there, and you have 5,200. Like, why not play Josh Palmer? Like what? Like what? Like, do you have to go? Like, you're already good. Like, so.
Yeah.
So why play someone? And even if it's not Josh Palmer, it's like, well, who's 1 point lower than that? Play that guy instead of like, well, I can play the guy that's 3 points lower than that. That's going to be 1% owned. It's like, well, does that lineup even require that type of player? Like, just why sacrifice the projection at all when your lineup already is good? Like, I haven't looked through your individual lineups, and I didn't mean to turn this into like a let's inspect Neil's portfolio type of thing. I'm asking the question because, like, number one, this is kind of the weird thing of when Eric was on the podcast. Mm-hmm. Eric is a 1 to 3 lineup player, and I'm like typically a 20 to 50 lineup player, and played large field contests. But when it comes to NFL, like the only reason that I play the milli is because the milli has so many bad lineups that even the lineups that I make for the power sweeper plus EV in it, even if they may not have the highest first place, I could build slightly better lineups. But it's primarily because they gutted the slant. Like the slant used to be 3 times bigger, which means the amount of 150 maxers was only like 26 to 28%, and now it's like 50 to 60%. So I don't play it anymore. And then they have the flea flicker, which is 50K to first, and then a kick in the nuts to 10th place. So I don't want to play the $5 flea flicker with 150 lineups or whatever, 50 lineups. So I'm like, screw this. I'm just going to 3 max power sweep, both power sweeps, the $200 single entry spies for 100, the $200 double spy, the two $50 red zones, and then the $33 five max. And like, those are my lineups. And then I just throw all those lineups into the Millie also for peace of mind. And there's still plus EV for those that it's kind of turned around where like, I'm almost like Eric now of well, I don't, I don't, I don't have to, I could just cut off a certain projection number
Yeah, you
and then
could.
go any lineup. I had my lineups in my aggregate at least. The optimal aggregate was like 150, around there.
Yeah.
I was building lineups between 138 and 144, right? Depending on the ownership, right, of the
So
lineup.
yeah.
So
So
it's
I
like
can't
any
really.
lineup that didn't make 138, like I just didn't even consider. But in order to make lineups that even got 138 median points, like I pretty much needed to have at least one of Stevenson, Etienne, or Eckler. Like I wouldn't play all three of them together for combinatoric reasons, but like I gotta, in order to raise the, I'm not gonna play Leonard Fournette, Kenny Walker, and Deion Jackson on DraftKings, because then I would have to play like some type of Chargers stat, like in order to raise the projection up to 138. And I figured for the tournaments that I'm in, 138 with a certain ownership number is fine. And once you're at that point, it's like I could eliminate 90% of the player pool because they're never going to be making lineups that could even give me a 138 projection. And
Right.
you're building lineups. Obviously, you could sacrifice way more projection in millies, but
Right.
without looking through your lineups, we talk about this in the course about building portfolio set. This is in the advanced course. So go to theoryofdfs.com and pick it up. About if you're building a large lineup set, so like a 150 set,
Yep.
that when I would do it for like NBA or even NFL, when I would play the slant, right? I'd play 75 lineups in the slant. I would build based on bands of risk. So the variance of lineups, meaning that picture baseball. The 1% don't stack, it's going to be optimal 2% of the time. So it's like, oh, this is plus EV.
Yeah.
But should you play 150 lineups of that? I mean, like, you can. It's just an extremely high variance. So it's
Yeah,
like,
no, I think
so I
that I
look
tend
at
to play
bands
the
that
same
go,
way as
out
you
of my
there.
75 lineups in NFL, I want 10 of them to be maybe not the highest first place equity, but still pretty strong top 20% equity. And then
Mm-hmm.
the 10 lineups on the bottom are like, these are the lineups where it's like, I got Naheem Hines in it, and I'm fading like Ramondre Stevenson, and I'm like, this is the lineup that's 60% total owned and sacrificing 16 points in projection. I still have as a plus EV lineup, but I'm only playing 10 of those types of lineups, 15 of those types of lineups, and then I'm playing 15 a little bit above that, and then 15 a little bit above that. So I have these
Okay.
bands of risk rather than like, here's 150 lineups that are all high variance in all different ways. Like I'm really like they're all high variance, but they're all high variance in different situations. So it's like I'm not like going 80% on Brian Robinson or something, but I'm kind of playing that type of play in like all of my lineups.
Yep.
So it's kind of like you're building a very high variance portfolio set
Yeah. I
in
do.
multiple ways, and
I try to build for first place. I don't think that I do any. I don't think that I try to make too many lineups that are just aiming for min cash equity. Although I will say last weekend was probably the closest I came to that. I played a lot of the chalk with Tony Pollard and some of the other better chalk options, and it was my best week yet. So maybe I am taking on a little bit too much risk.
also the
But
chalk hit like nuts last week. I mean, like that you can't just
yeah,
go by one slate there, but.
true.
But the difference being, so I'm gonna throw this at you. I'm actually asking you questions this week,
Okay.
right? Even though I'm talking more still, it still works out that way.
Long questions.
Right?
Yeah.
NFL you do this, but NBA you don't.
Correct. Yeah, because NBA is so in my opinion, NFL is not nearly as projectable as NBA. Not even my opinion. I think that's just factual. NFL is more projectable than MLB, than MMA, but compared to NBA, nothing is nearly as projectable as NBA. So yeah, NFL, I'm building a little bit more for higher range of outcomes, like thinking more about like the range of outcomes I think for basically any player is so much wider for NFL. So I'm trying to look at, what is a player's ceiling and what is their likelihood of hitting that ceiling rather than looking at their projection more. So I adjust projections quite a bit in NFL and less so in NBA. By the time I'm done messing with projections, sometimes they look pretty drastically. I mean, like AJ Dillon, I gave a pretty big bump to his projection to get to over 20% of AJ Dillon. My first crunch, I got to 0% AJ Dillon. So I make a lot more gut calls in NFL. Typically, I'm still trying to play enough chalk across the board that most of my lineup should be about 2/3 chalk and then a third contrarian plays just based on the exposure levels that I get to. It might not always work out exactly that way, but I'm still playing a good amount of the chalk generally in NFL. I'm just taking a lot more chances on guys that I think, I think this guy has a pretty good chance of hitting a ceiling and he's not getting much ownership. I take a lot more of those kinds of stands in NFL than NBA.
Why don't you have FOMO in NBA then?
Why don't I have what?
Why don't you have FOMO? Why don't you have
Oh,
this guard, this Jaden Ivey, overpriced $7,200 Jaden Ivey? Well, I mean, he could score 50 in this game. Like, why don't you have
sometimes
two
I
of
do.
him? And
Sometimes I do.
sometimes,
There,
but not as much. No, I mean,
occasionally.
I look at your stuff in NBA, and your 150 set looks much more similar to Adams or Steve's, or like it.
Yeah.
It looks much like, oh, okay, you have 86% of the guy that you probably should have 86% of. I mean,
Right.
but but I also don't see the well, what happens if Kelly Olynyk goes off on this 12 game slate at 5,800, and it's like, yeah, he's 2% owned, and you know how much of him you have? Zero. You just have none.
Right.
Like it seems like even on a 12 game NBA slate, like you have much less players in general in your pool than you would have on an NFL slate. And
Yeah.
yes, you're right, because the ranges of outcomes are much narrower in NBA. But I'm talking just about the psychological reason. You mentioned FOMO, the fear of
That's
missing
true.
out. Like he's like,
Yeah.
well, what if Brian Robinson or Naeem Hines has a
Because I get to play
25
NBA
point
every
game?
day. I think that's the answer. I get to play NBA every day for months and months. I only get so many NFL slates, so I get geared up for NFL. NBA is just kind of like, this is another NBA slate.
But
I'll see
isn't
what
that a
happens.
leak? Isn't that how you're not supposed to think?
Probably, yeah.
Okay. Oh, at least you
but
can
but I'm
admit
human.
that,
I have
right?
leaks. Yeah, no, I have leaks. Yeah, in NBA, I also I do a lot more in terms of like late swaps. So I think that factors into my exposures. I'm in NFL. You don't really get as much late breaking news that's going to change what you're doing. So I can just play the chalk and sometimes hope for some news to break my way in late swap. I also do have I had a slate early this year where I ended up assuming that Jamal Murray was going to be out, and so I had a lot of, was it Bones Highland maybe? I forget who and of course I had like 20% of him, and he didn't play a single minute in the game, even though Jamal Murray was out. So even though I got the news I wanted to, I don't know. So I do take risks here and there in NBA when I think there is news coming that could break my way, and it's. But in general, I don't think you need to take risks like that unless you want to take risks for the purpose of like late swap. And I did the same thing last week with the Timberwolves versus Milwaukee. One of the last games of the night, we had Giannis questionable, we had Gobert questionable, we had Ant questionable. I was like, I just need one of these guys to be ruled out, and by leaving some salary and room to play this game, I'm going to be in a great spot. And of course, all of them played, and my lineups were basically dead anyway. So it's a different game. There's a lot more thought to late swap in NBA and the way the projections change, and you can just trust the projections so much more in NBA just because there are so many more plays in the game, and it's not really based on individual plays accounting for like 50% of a player's scoring for the game.
Right, but I combat FOMO by leaning on my poker background of like since I was primarily a cash game poker player, like it's just one long game, right? It's like
Sure.
if I'm down tonight, what is the difference between the hand that I play now versus the hand that I play tomorrow? Like it's just one long game. If I'm in a PLO game versus if I'm in a low limit hold'em game, like if I'm playing 7 card stud, with 73-year-olds or whatever, like it's just all the hands are the hands, and it doesn't matter what format or anything. So to me, like when people are like, oh, you only have 18 weeks of NFL, it's like, well, I also have soccer and MMA and NBA and like it's just another slate no matter what the sport. Oh, tonight is Showdown. Okay. Like it's
Yeah,
just another format. So like I don't look at it as, oh, I gotta do something. I don't have to, like I'm not trying to change the way that I play DFS because there's less slates of that
it's
specific
also,
sport.
so for me, it's more entertainment. Like I think that NFL for me is the most entertaining, and I know that when I'm building my lineups, I'm going to be spending the next 9 hours of my day. I guess that's including Showdown too. So I'm going to spend the next 6 hours of my day watching this play out, and I'm going to be actually watching all the games, which I don't do for other sports. So I think that there's that aspect of it too. Just like I know I'm going to be watching the game, I'm going to be tracking this throughout the day. So maybe that's part of the reason I FOMO was more of a concern for me with NFL than NBA. Um, yeah,
But do you
I
think that's
think that
good? But
you make a good point.
should you be working to get rid of that?
I should, yeah, I should be. I acknowledge that as much. I acknowledge as much on the Showdown show that I did last night, or one of these nights. I do so many, I don't remember them. But one of them, I talked about like, yeah, I'm kicking myself. I'm not getting to any Mitchell Wilcox, and like, should I be kicking myself for not getting to Mitchell Wilcox? Probably not. But I still do have some of that FOMO, and probably you're right that I should be getting rid of some of that and just being like, you know what, I can just not play Mitchell Wilcox. There are other players that I feel more strongly about who are also getting very little ownership, who I actually think have a better chance to put up a ceiling score. So I do think that it is a little bit of a leak to have FOMO, just or to let that play a role in my decision making. I do think
Well,
it's a bit of a leak.
I found a way to combat FOMO is to play less lineups. Like
Sure.
the thing about talking to Eric like 2 years ago when we started the podcast, where he's like I'm playing one lineup. So it's like, well, you got to make a decision and you got to live with it, type of thing. So when when I play soccer DFS, I typically play like 3 lineups, 5 lineups, maybe, right? One cash lineup, one like small field GPP lineup, like 2 or 3 large field. Like I'm not doing much, and it'll be like a 5 game slate, and it's like,
Yep.
oh yeah, this center back could score a goal in a set piece, and for the large field contest, if he does score, you're probably going to need him, but it'll happen 2 or 3 times a season. So
Right.
like, do I do that this slate? Like, do I need to do this? No. I'm building 5 lineups, and I'm not playing contests where, like, dude, he could score a goal and you may still not need him. So it really
Yeah.
makes me think of, okay, what lineups and who do I think is like my biggest edge on the slate, and then go, I'm gonna build my 5 lineups this way, and if it happens to go the other way, then I lose, and then I could go on to the next slate. But when
Yeah.
you have like 50 lineups, you almost feel as if, well, because I have so many lineups, like, yeah, I could play this guy in that one lineup. I could play
Right.
whatever and then you start getting analysis paralysis in the
Yeah.
future
That's
of
true.
like why not identify the highest edge situations
Yep.
and then just hammer it.
And that's why it's funny when people compare like EV or like 1% buckets, ROI or like 1% buckets. Like it's different if you're playing 5 lineups a night versus 10 lineups a night, because you're gonna make worse lineups if you're making 100. Like I definitely think that I was a better DFS player when I was hand building 10 to 20 lineups as opposed to playing 150. And I actually did do that towards the end of MLB season. I had just a brutal MLB season, as you may recall this year. Did not go my way at all. And towards the end, I was sometimes playing 30 lineups, 40 lineups, and I would lose the paralysis, and I would just like be like, okay, I'm just gonna play 5-man stacks of these 3 teams and just like spread out across these 3 teams being my 5-man stacks, and then have different 3-man stacks, or maybe not even secondary stacks. So I did do that for MLB, and I actually this year I'm playing less NBA. I'm playing the days generally where there is no NFL, but I'm playing fewer lineups, and I do think that that does help. Playing fewer lineups does help to eliminate some of that FOMO there. It's just like, yeah, you can't play everybody. You got to just play the guys that you actually think are going to do well, as opposed to like, I could see it. You play the guys that like, no, I think this is going to happen. So yeah, I think that is a good strategy if you are having trouble with FOMO in 150 max, and it probably does make sense to play fewer lineups.
Right. And I really rarely ever played 150 to begin with. But
Right.
but even in baseball, like I didn't feel the need to like, oh, I need to play every stack. It's like, no, like what do I think are the most under-owned stacks? I'm just gonna,
Yeah.
instead of throwing in one twin stack for the hell of it, it's like, well, I'm just gonna play another Cub stack or what. I mean, like just
Yeah.
like that's
And
why.
I got better about that this year, about not trying to play every single stack, just in general. I used to literally play every single stack. It would just be, relative to the projected ownership and their odds of being the top stack. I would try to get some of everybody. Now I'm finding like you don't really need to do that. I can just pick out, a handful of my favorites. I still spread out, I think, a lot more than most, probably more than I need to. And it probably does make more sense to take the approach of just figure out who are the best stacks on this particular slate and spread out. And even, among those teams, you can get to a lot of different stacks. So I do think that's probably generally the better approach long
Well,
term.
if
I
you
mean,
have
I
a
think, I think you could win with
if you're
both.
only using blunt methodologies, that's what you kind of have to do. If you're using more precise methodologies, then you could be like, well, out of 150, this stack should only be played 3 times, so you only play it 3 times. I mean, if you're doing a
Right.
much more balanced approach like that, then I can understand. But if you're doing it
Which
very
is what I do for
bluntly,
MLB. I set caps, individual caps on each stack to add up to around 100%. Although I tend to be not quite exact, but some sites that'll be like I look at each stack, look at their, look at the boom bust tool, the top stacks tool, look at the projected ownership for that stack and the odds of being the top stack on the slate, and then set a cap on each stack, based on that, trying to play exploitatively is generally the way that I approach MLB, and it worked great for me last year, and then this year uh, wasn't working for me, and I switched up what I did, and what I switched to didn't work. And I think it just kind of comes down to variance. I think there's a lot of variance in every sport, but MLB in particular is just you win some, you lose some, and this year was just not a great year for me.
right? But I'm enjoying myself a lot more playing less lineups. Like
Yeah,
I especially NBA. Like it's like I'll play 4 lineups. Like that. But I'm just gonna play 4 lineups, and that's like, or in NFL, like 16 lineups. That one I played this past week. I played a cash lineup on DraftKings. I did well this week. This was the first week I actually lost money on props though, by a little bit, like minus 15%. So not
okay,
bad. And primarily because the Falcons will never pass the ball, and no
yeah.
matter how low the props go, I'm still next week. It's over Drake London, over Kyle Pitts, and over Mark Mariota, and just I'm gonna keep on doing that until I make my money back. But uh, there was gonna be such a big cash train this past Sunday on DraftKings that I thought it was a great week to exploit triple ups and quintuple ups. So I made that on Sunday morning. I'm like, I can't pass this up. Like, so I entered I on DraftKings I had like 2,700 in cash volume, and I had what 687. I ended up with $700 worth of like 3-mans, 5-mans, triples, quints, stuff like that. Because everyone dude, there was like one lineup that like was duped like by a quarter of the field in double ups, and of course it's the lineup that I played, right? But once I saw
In
that,
double
I'm
up.
like, well, so many people are going to be playing the same exact lineup in the triple ups and quintuple ups. So Sunday morning after 11:30, once the projections updated everywhere, I aggregated everything, and then I just said, how much different can I get from this lineup while not sacrificing as much projection? And I found a lineup that was a 6v6 off of that lineup that was only 2.5 points lower projected.
I saw you talking about this on Twitter, and I thought you had an interesting conversation with, I think it might have been Anthony Miko. I'm not sure if it was Anthony. Somebody on Twitter was saying that for that approach to work, maybe you need to be targeting actually good players, like predictable players who
Right.
tend to be better players.
Right, because I want
Is
them
that
to
your
do.
approach for you?
But it's not for head
Yeah,
to heads. Head to heads, you'd never do it. It's more of if
right,
you could
right.
find
Just for the
if I could find 3-mans, like I would literally go in the 3-man lobby and see the 2s out of 3s and then go, is this 2 people I know? Yes, enter. Because it's like
yeah,
it's quite possible that both of them will have the same exact lineup, and that's
yeah,
death in 3-mans, right?
yeah.
So in triple ups, I'm going to the 31-man triple ups, and then hitting the entrance button. 16 people, and I look and I see the names, and I go, yep, 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 and I'm like, okay, this is the one to, because I know that it all comes down to, can I beat the train or can I not beat the train? But when I beat the train, if I get 3x my money or 5x my money, then I don't mind
Worth it,
sacrificing points. And then
right?
someone else on Twitter, I forgot his name, also did something similar, but played a lineup that was a 4v4 off of
Okay.
that projected for slightly higher, and it was a lineup it was one of the lineups I was looking at of like, It's a 4v4, and then once I saw that there was an additional 2v2 for only a quarter, like a 3/4 of a point lower projection, I'm like, I think that extra 2v2 is worth it off that lineup. I just want to get as different as possible. Give me as many bullets to beat that lineup as possible, and then play that in the trip. So I took out all of my lineups that I would normally play in triple ups and quintuple ups, and I just exported and just this one line, and it beat the train by 7 points.
Do you think you could, instead of looking at the names, just look at the icons? Like, are there enough people with like the Saber Sim icon or the stochastic icon where you could just be like, this person's going to play the optimal? No.
No. I mean, it's more of like the regs. It's more of like looking for the BK readers and the McLovins and
Okay.
those types of people. Of just
The names.
right,
Yeah.
the names. But only in triple ups, and like you're doing it.
Right.
And
Doesn't work in double up.
Right. I highlight this on the pregame show on Roto Grinders because people misconstrue it like, oh, I'll do this in double ups. Don't do it in double ups. You have to
don't
get
want to
paid
sacrifice
more
for
than what you want, and also you have to be able to predict the lineups.
Yeah.
Right? Because like I had one person. This was maybe this was back in baseball. Was like I'm trying to do what you're doing, and I'm turning out to actually end up with a lineup that's chalkier. Like what they're doing is like, oh, I'm going to run the optimal, and then I'm going to get a 4v4 off of that, and then they're finding out that their 4v4 is actually the duplicated lineup. Huh. And I go, well, like, you have to be able to predict what the lineup is.
Right.
Well, because what they were doing is they were running the bat optimal. And assuming that the bat optimal is what everyone was playing. It's like, are you sure everyone's playing that? That you're in your contest? It's like, no, they may be playing something else, right? You have to figure that out first. Then
right.
Whatever that lineup is.
Which takes experience. You need to be able to see over time what people go to, which I don't know. I don't play these contests. I assume that generally, though, some people are just playing the optimal from an aggregate or from one source versus another. Is that kind of generally how you
generally,
know?
And also it's all based also a little bit on touting. I knew in cash on DraftKings that the 3 running back build would be Eckler, Stevenson, Etienne. Even though Mixon projected well, and you could build lineups with Mixon also that didn't have Josh Fields in it or something. There was the aggregate optimal was technically Khalif Raymond, a Josh Allen lineup, but I knew that people were playing Eckler over Mixon. Like some people would play Mixon, but he'd be like 15% owned in double ups, while Eckler would be 50% owned. Even though the aggregate optimal didn't have Eckler in it. So now what I have to do is go, well, I know Eckler's going to be played, so I lock him in and then run it. And then I go, no, people are playing Foster Moreau. They're not playing Evan Ingram, right? Or they're not playing Brock Wright. So I lock in Foster Moreau. So it's like once you start they're playing Amon-Ra St. Brown. Don't give me a lineup without Amon-Ra St. Brown. Even though there's a lineup that's 0.2 points higher median projected without him, that has like Godwin, Lockett, and Palmer. There was one lineup like that.
It is some work to figure out what other people are going to play.
Right, it's always close to the aggregate. It's still close to the aggregate optimum. You're not finding a lineup that's way off, but it's like, I know this is what people are doing. And then it's like, okay.
But this isn't something that I could step in and do what you're doing. Like somebody like myself who doesn't play cash wouldn't be able to quickly figure out necessarily the lineups that these guys are playing. This is something that you probably need to be playing some cash games first to figure out what lineups people are likely to run.
Right. It's the likely cash line. But you could say the same thing for GPPs. My biggest skill in GPPs, I still believe, I mean, pretty much every week. I mean, do I have to get hired by people? I mean, like, I look at the ownership around the industry and I go, everyone has it wrong. And I don't understand how they don't adjust it. Like one thing I saw in some Discords was, wow, Josh Fields is like twice as owned as all the projected ownership. And I said, why didn't you change his project? I changed his project. That's the thing is, people played Fields. This is what I saw. I played Fields thinking because he was good leverage at 6% owned. And I said, you know the reason why I didn't play Fields? Because I thought he was over-owned at 14%. And he goes, yeah, but how did you know he's going to be 14%? It's like, because I changed it to 14 because I knew people were going to do. dude,
I didn't
don't.
see that one coming. It made sense that it would be high owned
Aaron
against the
Jones,
Dolphins
another
with
one.
how well he's
Like
doing.
there were several sites that had Aaron Jones at 12%. I said
Yeah.
nope, he's 20%. He ended up coming in 24, but I'm like he's 20% owned. Like how would
Yeah.
you know that? It's like, dude, do you listen to shows? Like he projects well enough that he's in that mix, and everyone wants to fucking play him. It's like everyone's talking about Aaron Jones, and like okay, I think he's
Haven't
overowned.
we haven't we had the conversation before though, where you said you had a conversation with somebody at DraftKings and they told you like what less than 10% of people had heard of Rotogrinders, which was the biggest site at the time. So like how many people are listening to shows?
Yeah, but that's what they're thinking. It's a
Okay,
byproduct, right? It's a byproduct
sure.
of any anyone that thinks in a casual way is gonna. I mean, it's very easy to look at that. I mean,
Right.
like why
Aaron
would you?
Jones against the Lions made sense. Yeah.
Right. Like for instance, I people had Foster. I there was one side that had Foster Moreau projected at 14% ownership, and Evan Ingram at 10% ownership, and I changed Foster Moreau's ownership down to 6, and Evan Ingram up to 18. Right, which was more like what's going to happen, and like why did I do that? Said because Foster Moreau was not talked about all week. The only reason why Foster Moreau became into play is because we found out on Saturday that that Darren Waller was probably not going to play. If Darren Waller plays, Foster Moreau's not even owned, right?
Right.
So it's
Of
like,
course.
how many people are reacting that quickly to that on Sunday? Not
Right.
nowhere near what you think. And if you take out Foster Moreau, most people aren't clicking on the one of the tight ends for the Lions, especially one with a Q tag on it. So I'm like,
True.
who are they playing? It's like, well, the number one name that I heard on multiple podcasts was Evan Ingram, and he in that cheap tight end range, he's up there in the projection. So it's like people are gonna plug it Evan Ingram, 96% snap share or whatever, and so I got to adjust ownership based on that. Like people are not rational. People are in these bubbles and they think that like, oh, everyone's like us, right?
Yeah.
Neil, I I hang out everywhere. Okay, I'm primarily in the Rotogrinders Discord because I'm part of Rotogrinders,
Right.
but I'm in I'm in the Blitz chat at the Rotogrinders thing because a lot of people blindly play like the Blitz Optimal,
Right.
and over the course of a long period of time, that's probably profitable in cash games, right? But it would so many times if you're just going to be in your own bubble, you're going to be like, wow, I didn't realize so and so was that going to be that high owned or something. Like, yeah, well, because not everyone's in your bubble. So like in looking through the aggregate optimal, like the aggregate optimal with Allen was an Allen Raymond lineup, and I'm like, I'm not sure how many. I think from what I could tell, people are playing Justin Fields in cash, right? He projects well enough. He's a running quarterback and he's 5,300. And Josh Allen just so much higher, more expensive than that.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers projected better point per dollar wise than Justin Fields for like what, 600 more? Aaron Rodgers was in one of the aggregate optimals. But people aren't clicking on fucking Aaron Rodgers. Like people don't want to play this guy, right? He was chalky in GP. He was chalky enough in GPPs, but not in cash games, right? They love the rushing quarterback. So I'm like, okay, people are going to be playing Fields. Then once you lock in Fields, dude, it's the lineup. Like there's no like you're getting Stevenson, Eckler. You like as long as you if you're using the blitz projections, the Mixon was actually 2 points higher than any other projection system. So you were getting a Mixon lineup instead, but any other if you're using ETR, Daily Roto, anywhere else, Stochastic, like you were getting Eckler in that lineup, right? Yeah. And you were getting Palmer, Eckler, whatever the dupe train collusion lineup, that's the lineup. So once I saw that, I went into the Blitz chat like late Saturday night and said, I don't know what you got, because people were talking about, do we play Drake London in cash? And I'm like, please don't do this. I mean, feel free if you want to, but whatever. I just posted. I said, here, I plugged in my lineup. I was going to play the Fields lineup in double ups. And I said, whatever you're doing, I didn't say to people to play it, but whatever you're doing, just realize that this lineup that I'm showing you right now is going to be like duped like by 25+% of the field in whatever cash contest you play. Does that
so
mean
what I'm hearing is that Roto-Grinders is the collusion chat.
Right.
You're posting lineups for everybody.
No, but you know what I saw in the ETR Discord? someone posted that Blender's tweeting out the ETR lineup. Right? Number one, I didn't tweet it, and I just posted in the. It's not the ETR lineup. It's right that's the bubble thing that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right? Like, get out of your bubble. Like, you're not alone in your bubble. What I don't know what I'm trying to come up with the title of this goddamn episode. Like, what would you could call something where, like, whatever is happening in your bubble probably is happening in other people's bubbles also. Like, because the point that was being made, I saw it's on the ETR Discord, is like how are people getting to our same lineup? Like, even after the slate locked and everything, it's like, wow,
your bubble's not that special. That's what I'm hearing.
Right. That's what I'm saying. You're not that. Maybe you're not that special.
Yeah.
You're not that. Yeah, that's what we're doing. I like insults as.
I know you do.
You're not that special. Like, I did the Twitter Spaces because I do on Sunday nights with Dean to Sweat.
I still don't get Twitter Spaces. I'll never join you for your Twitter Spaces because I don't understand them.
Whatever.
It doesn't record, right? It doesn't record.
It does, but I mean, it
does.
Yeah, but it's mostly just live audio.
Okay.
But Dean didn't even play cash games this past week, and Dean guessed both my FanDuel and DraftKings lineup.
Wow.
Or it was like a 1v1 off. But it's like, dude, if Dean could put it together, right? I'm not saying Dean's an idiot, but it's like he wasn't studying what a median lineup looked like or anything. He's just like, what are the best point per dollar plays? How do I fit them together? And it's like, if you play Fields, you're probably playing Moreau at tight end. You're probably playing Stevenson and Etienne at least. Since you're paying down for Fields, you probably paid up for Eckler. You're playing Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, once you start piecing them together, you play Josh Palmer. And it's like, either you played Godwin or Lockett. And I'm like, okay, you're good. And then you go to FanDuel. It's like, well, do you play Allen? Yes. Okay. Then what do you fit? I mean, like, it's not hard to come up with this that you're not special. You're really not that special to do that. So it's not like, oh, people are looking at one thing or the other. And I see the difference in the bubbles. Because I'll go into the Blitz chat and people with just the Blitz will go, everyone's going to play so-and-so. And I'm like, no, he's 7% owned. Said, yeah, but he pops so much in the Blitz. And I said, yeah, but everyone doesn't use the Blitz. Right? And the same thing for ETR. I mean, I'll go to ETR and I'll see their ownership projections. They'll say some guy is 26% owned. I go, he's going to be like 15% owned. He's like, well, why do they have him at 26? Because they have him 2 points higher projected than anyone else in the industry. Right? They're much higher on that guy. Right? So I think they had, someone had Taquan Thornton at like 8% owned. I'm like, he's going to be like 4% owned. Right? In the milli or something like that. And that's what he came in like, what, 3.5% owned or something like that? It's like, because the only people that are even considering Taquan Thornton are people that are looking at projection systems. Like, dude, no common person is clicking this name at all. Yeah. They're not paying down here. They're not.
Yeah.
Especially with the Ramondre Stevenson ownership getting even higher and higher.
Yep.
Like, they're not playing a receiver with the running back on the Patriots, if anything. So you got to adjust that ownership percent, and people just get shocked week after week. And sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes I'm off on a player. We had that Miles Sanders week that I thought Miles Sanders would be 10%, and he came in 22%. That happens sometimes.
I mean, I was pretty shocked by the Justin Fields ownership this week. I didn't see it get into 14%. So I'm definitely included in that. People who are in my own bubble, I don't really look at much outside of Stochastic. I don't really listen to many shows. Most weeks I probably listen to 0 shows outside of Stochastic. So I'm definitely guilty of being in my own bubble, and it's probably a leak for me as well.
Someone asked me earlier in the week, like a Friday or something, if Terry McLaurin was a good leverage play at 5,900. I said, no, he's going to be over-owned. And they said, but RG has him projected for like 6.5% ownership. I said, yeah, but it's going to be double that. And they go, well, they literally said, how do you know?
That surprised me too. Yeah.
It didn't surprise me. That's the point that I'm making is that.
I know, but we also had him low projected ownership, and I was like, oh, Terry McLaurin against the Vikings with Taylor Heineke at quarterback. He's going to be this low, and then sure, I'm going to play some Terry McLaurin. And then he comes in, as you said, way over-owned.
Like, that's what I'm saying. Why don't people hire me? I don't want to be hired. There's no scientific.
That's why, because you're not for sale, apparently.
Well, but I can't give you like numbers. All I could say is that I could look at your numbers and go, yeah, based on human beings, like this is going to be much higher owned than than you think it's going to be, or much lower owned, right? You take a look at some of the ownership here, and you go like, people were projecting Zay Jones to be like 12% owned. I go, he's going to be like 8% owned.
Yeah.
Like, people don't click on these names. It's like you take a look. You go, I'm scrolling through some of these things, and I'm like I don't know what people are projecting this ownership to be. Like, rationally, it makes sense, but irrationally, human beings aren't. They aren't.
Right.
Right? And people want
People
people
play who
want
they
to
want
play
to.
DeAndre. People see DeAndre Hopkins getting 16 targets or something, and he's 7,900 against the Seahawks, who have an awful defense. So they're like, okay, they're going to play DeAndre Hopkins, right? So that's going to go
Yeah.
up. And then everyone's playing Josh Palmer. Josh Palmer was projected for like 23% ownership. I laughed
Yeah.
at that. I said 30, easy. Like, this is easy. People had Stevenson at like 32 and Etienne at 30. I'm like, this is going to be like 40 and 38 or something like in that range. But the thing is, I'm changing it.
Right.
So people are looking at my lineups going, well, you played this guy and this guy and that guy. It's like, based on and then they compare it to the ownership that they have, and they go, doesn't that seem too chalky or whatever, or too contrary or what? Like, not according to my numbers, right?
Right.
It's like, how did you play Mixon over that? Like, yeah, because I knew Mixon would be 12% owned and not 18% owned. It's like, it's the same thing I said before about Fields. When people are literally saying, I wouldn't have played Fields if he was 14% owned. And I go, yeah, that's the reason I didn't play Fields.
Right.
Right? Because I knew he would be about 14%. I had him at 12, but I had like 12 to 14% ownership. And they go, well, how did you know? It's like, because, dude, he's going to be in the fucking cash game lineups.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I would have full faded Fields at 14% ownership. Definitely would not have been getting there. You asked me on a recent show if I don't think about this stuff independently of the ownership projections at all. Probably a month ago, and I've realized a couple times since that I was like, I actually do think about ownership outside of just the ownership projections, more so in other sports. NFL, I really struggle with trying to figure out ownership a lot of the time. But like NBA, I'm definitely thinking about like, yeah, I think the ownership's going to be about here, and I look at the ownership projections pretty closely to see what stands out to me based on like what my priors would be, like who I would think would be getting ownership based on salary and stuff. And I definitely do think about it in certain spots separately from just what the stochastic ownership projections are, but certainly not to the level that you do, where I'm looking across the industry at what everybody else is doing. I'm more just like, I think that this is, people don't like this guy or people do like this guy, and they're going to play more or less based on that. And I think I sometimes can be pretty good at figuring out where the ownership projections are not exactly right, but certainly not as advanced as you are, where you're looking at everything and listening to shows and figuring
NBA
out.
is much harder. And dude, the daily sports are much harder because there's very little time decay.
Yeah, true.
Like, there's no anchoring. Like, the reason why I'm very good at doing it for NFL is because people look. It's a weekly thing, so it's like, what are people looking at on Tuesday? What are people looking at on Wednesday? And it's like, the further away it is, the more and more people will anchor to that. So
Yeah.
that's why by default, if something happens Sunday morning, be more inclined to jam it than not jam it, because people aren't going to react. So if you listen and you look across the industry, Tuesday, Wednesday, first look stuff, and the more mainstream podcasts that have, all I would hear is like Aaron Jones and Travis Etienne, because now he has a full workload, and Terry McLaurin. Everyone's mentioning the Heineke thing with Terry McLaurin, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. It still has a great target share, and then I mean, you look through all of that, and you're like, well, how is this going to change by Friday? Like, did anything change enough where you got to jam someone in? No. It's like, and then Saturday, it's like, oh, Damian Harris probably is not going to play. People love playing Ramondre Stevenson, so I got to bump that. So what's the thing that I heard a bunch of times with Joe Mixon? Inefficient. The Bengals suck without Chase. Be careful. Right? So I'm playing a ton of the Bengals. Right? I'm playing Burrow stacks with Higgins, and I'm playing tons of Mixon. It's like, well, based on the projections, Mixon should be 18% owned. People don't want to
Right.
click on Mick. People want to click on Aaron Jones, right?
Right.
Even though he projects lower, even though he's more expensive, people want to click on that. Or they look, Mike Williams is out. DeAndre Carter is questionable, right? Keenan Allen's out, and they go, Austin Eckler, 7 million targets, right? 26-point implied total against the Falcons. Horrible defense. Got to play Eckler. Like, you get anchored to these things that, like, even if information comes out on Friday and Saturday, people just, they've already built their line. They've already mentally determined what they want to play. So it's like,
Yeah.
it just gets more and more like that. So you have to me personally, you have to adjust. To me, you have to adjust for that. Like, there's no reason. It's like, well, people can't fit in these stacks and do this. Like, well, they'll try. I'm telling you, they're going to try. Like, the only surprise of the slate that got me on ownership was Cordell Patterson.
Yeah, he came in way higher than I was expecting. I thought that late news and just like he's been out, I thought nobody was going to play him.
Right, he was 11% owned. I think I had him at 4.
Yeah, I saw that touchdown and I was like, oh hell yeah, I'm definitely over the field on Cordell Patterson. And then of course I was well under the field. So yeah, that was disappointing.
Yeah, just looking through some of this ownership. But I mean, the thing is, when I adjust ownership, I don't have to get like everyone right. I mean, I'm not adjusting Mike Gesicki's ownership. Like, I'm just like, it doesn't matter to me, right?
Just the outlier, the ones that are getting a lot of ownership or very little ownership that are clearly wrong.
Right. I could just look at it and they're clear. And also, sometimes they're clearly wrong just simply based on projections.
Right.
Sometimes I'm just going to run 300 lineups with some type of stack, right? Some type of correlation, and let's see what shows up. And I'll run every set of projections. I'll run RG, I'll run stochastic, I'll run 4 for 4, I'll run whatever. And it's like, dude, you're getting a lot of, there's a lot of evidence. Like, dude, unless you adjust Foster Moreau's projection to reflect that Waller is out, like, you get a lot of Evan Ingram. Like, I'm getting a lot of Evan Ingram. I'm getting a lot of Evan Ingram in the tight end spot as a one-off, or I'm getting Etienne Ingram lineups. I'm getting a lot of Lawrence, Etienne Ingram types of lineups. Like, maybe Ingram's not going to be 7-8% owned. Like the projections say this. It's like, why are we projecting Kyle Pitts at 14% ownership? He's not going to be 14% owned. Like why? He doesn't fit. Like, he literally doesn't fit into enough lineups and no one's playing Mariota. So, like, what the fuck is going on? Kyle Pitts came in at 8%. But yeah. I saw 14, and I'm like, no, that's Ingram's ownership.
We had Stochastic had him at 9.7%. He came in at 8.7%. So not that far off on Kyle Pitts.
Right, because I'm aggregate. Like, with the ownership, I'm just aggregating across. I'm, like, looking at the number going, that's wrong. But when you adjust it, you have to adjust it for everyone. I can't just say, I'm going to take Evan Ingram and take him from 8 to 16. I have to take the 8 points off somewhere. So typically I'm looking in that range of a $3,300 tight end. It's like, okay, I got to take a point of ownership off of Cole Kmet, a point of ownership off of whatever in the 3K, like that, right in that range. And then there you go. And then you go to Aaron Jones at 7,400. So once I added, basically doubled Aaron Jones's ownership projection, you know who got a decrease in ownership? Josh Jacobs. Because he's 7,300 and he's sitting right there. It's like, if he's more owned, that means Jacobs has to be less owned. Fournette has to be less owned. Walker has to be less owned. Basically, anyone that's not Stevenson, Etienne has to be less owned because people will go Stevenson, Etienne, and then Jones. Or then Eckler. Right? That type of stuff. And that's why I played a ton of Kenny Walker. Like, this is the guy that's going to get squeezed out. Right? So, I mean, like, I don't think what I do is that complicated.
Yeah, it's probably, I mean, it doesn't sound all that complicated. You're doing a lot of research. It's a lot of work. You're looking at every different site and playing around.
I'm literally listening and reading shit.
Okay.
I mean, that's all all I'm doing is like, okay, the new article at ETR came out. Let me peruse this, right? Yahoo
Yeah.
Sports article, CBS article, something, the Fantasy Footballers podcast. I'll leisurely put it on while I'm doing something else. I'll
Yeah.
just
No, that's true.
hit
Not a ton of
names and
work.
whatever. I'm like, okay, they're talking a lot more about this than that, and I'm not logging it down. It's just seeping into my brain.
Yeah.
And then on like Saturday, I'm looking at these ownership projections. I'm like, this doesn't seem right. Right? It's just this doesn't seem right. Like this is going to be much higher. Like that's why I said the field stuff. It's like people are playing fields as leverage. Really?
Right.
But it's very similar in baseball, Neil. We've done it in baseball where even on a daily sport where people at 3:30, 4 o'clock, 4:30 Eastern will look at a top stacks tool, a slate IQ, something like that, and go, "Wow, the Twins are underowned." And it's like, yeah, and everyone will look at that and go and play the Twins. It's like this, they may be actually proper.
I actually think that is part of the reason that I did so much worse at MLB this year than last year. I don't think that was a thing at the beginning of the season last year. I don't think people were looking at it as much. So I think that I was looking at the top stacks tool, half an hour before the slate when I would start my MLB stuff. And I think that early in the season last year, that worked great. Like that people had not really caught on as much.
For it.
But then by the end of the season, I felt like it was, this stack that I thought was going to be well underowned came in overowned, and I think that's part of the problem is that this year I sort of didn't work out quite as well with the people playing a little bit better
especially
this year.
Especially in sports like that, especially towards the end of the year, who's playing MLB DFS? A lot of basically hardcore degenerates.
True, that might be it too. It might be later on in the season you're running into more of that issue.
Right, and NFL you have so much casual participation.
Yeah, always.
That it's not gonna matter that much. But like for the daily sports, like you're gonna baseball that's gonna happen. It's like anyone that's playing the GPPs in MLB in mid-August is probably looking at tools that you're looking at also.
Yeah, that's a good point. That might be part of the issue.
But you have to adjust for that. That's why you adjust and you go. And sometimes the slightly overowned team actually ends up coming in underowned. It's like, everyone's going to play the Yankees today. And I'm like, no, everyone's going to think that the Yankees are going to go overowned and they're not going to play enough of them, right?
Right.
Right? And I see that in not as much of that like meta third level game in NFL so much. Only because but you have to adjust. The thing about the ownership is that you have to adjust for two different types profile of players. You have to adjust for the sharper projections focused players, and then the casual talking point narrative players. So like to me, Aaron Jones and Terry McLaurin are the narrative based. Like it's not like they project badly. It's just that they project 1 or 2 points lower than other players in that range. So if you're just using projections, you're actually not going to get that much of them, and the ownership is going to look like it's low.
Right.
But on the other hand, you have this entire casual player base that it's like, get on board the Terry McLaurin train, right? Get on board the Aaron Jones train. He's riding off into the sunset. Like you have to account for those people also.
Yep. People listen to the footballers and drastically changing everything they think week to week. Yeah, it's a good segment of the player pool.
Recency bias in general. Like a lot of times it's just recency bias of like, Aaron Jones, like they almost phased out AJ Dillon, and it's like, Aaron Jones against the Lions, the worst team. Like, dude, every podcast, worst DVOA. It's the Coors Field of NFL, right?
Yeah.
Got the Russian running defense.
I mean,
gotta play
guilty.
Aaron Jones.
Yeah. Although I said I also love AJ Dillon, which people did not listen to that, and rightfully so. Apparently, I mean, he had his opportunities, but did not. Yeah.
Yeah, but had you known the snap count, obviously Aaron Jones got injured.
Right.
Your exposure looks much more sharp than playing a 25% own Aaron Jones.
Right. Yeah.
So in hindsight, actually, you look like the smart one.
Yeah. It still didn't work out because I mean, AJ Dillon was getting the goal line work. He had the 2 goal line carries even before Aaron Jones got hurt. I think Aaron Jones got hurt in the second half.
Right.
But
no,
yeah,
I know. I had Aaron Jones in 4 lineups. When I'm looking on Red Zone, Packers have the ball on the 2-yard line. I'm like, okay, here comes the Aaron Jones touchdown. I'm like, what the fuck is 28 doing in there? What the
Yeah.
fuck? Right?
See, I'm like, I've always been like, well, why don't they just always give it to AJ Dillon? Every time I've watched him play, it's like he's an automatic at least 1 or 2 yards. Like he's just like, you can't stop him. He's quadzilla. You can't stop AJ Dillon. And of course, this time when I'm way overexposed to him, he just gets stuffed at the 1-yard line twice in 3 plays.
No, but so everyone else is thinking, why don't they play Aaron Jones 90% of snaps like Christian McCaffrey?
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like why?
And maybe they should. Yeah. Yeah. I know.
Did you see that the Colts fired Reich?
I don't have any. I've seen that people are thinking that he's a scapegoat. I don't really know much about Frank Reich or the owner, Jim Irsay, or I don't know.
No. The more important thing is they hired a guy with no coaching experience.
They have 0 play calling experience on their coaching staff now. That's what I read.
They've literally 0 play calling
experience. Which is hilarious. That'll be interesting.
And they have head coaching experience on their coaching staff, but they're hiring, their former center that the most experience he's had was high school coaching where he had a 500 record.
Interesting. Yeah, it'll be fun to watch, I guess. I don't know. They got rookie quarterback, nobody who knows what they're doing on the coaching staff. It'll be a wild ride. Just take defenses against the Colts, I guess.
We have to wait for the Colts and the Titans to face each other now.
That'll be fun. Malik Willis did not look good. I'm shocked to see that the school that what's his name, Jerry. I just watched this documentary. Jerry, the preacher guy who Falwell, Jerry Falwell, the president of Liberty University.
Did Sam Ellinger go to Liberty University?
No, not that. Malik Willis went to Liberty University.
Oh, Malik Willis went to Liberty University. Oh, that's what happened.
Yeah, trying to come up with a joke related to, of course, he's a fraudulent quarterback coming out of Jerry Falwell's school.
Right. And they don't even have him running.
Yeah, not nearly to the extent they should be based on his college stats. But
looking at that game in the first half, they might as well dressed him up with like a butler's uniform, and just all he does is get the ball and and there's a little platter and he goes, "Here's Derrick Henry, take it."
Yeah,
like he's not the quarterback; he's the guy that just gives the ball to Derrick Henry.
Yeah, more or less.
Why don't if they were gonna do that, like why not just not even line up? Like, why even have a quarterback?
Yeah, just direct snap to Derrick Henry.
Direct snap to Derrick. Well, you want to have a quarterback because if you didn't see any quarterback there, then they just put like 10 guys on the ball. I mean, no one's throwing the ball. There's no even. What's the point of even covering the receivers at that point?
Yeah.
But that game, it worked in the first half only because the Chiefs had to account for maybe this time they will pass. Yeah. And then they found out that, oh, no, they're actually never going to pass. So we just never have to care about the pass.
Yeah.
They played a full 60 minutes and no receiver had a reception.
That was so weird. Never seen anything like that.
Kendall Hinton had more receptions in that game with the Broncos during the COVID period where they didn't have a quarterback. Because didn't Kendall Hinton have...
He was the quarterback, I thought, in that game.
No, he was the quarterback. I mean, he was a wide receiver playing the quarterback, but I think he still completed 3 passes.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I think they only threw the ball like maybe 7 times, and he completed 3 passes, like something. And even the game that like the Patriots when Belichick ran the ball, like when they only threw the ball 3 times, there was still 1 complete pass.
Yeah. No, this was unexpected. I definitely did not expect the 0 passing in that game. Yeah, it was.
You didn't have Malik Willis captain lineups?
I think I did. I did have some Malik, but I also I said on the show I was treating him like they're going to start running the ball with Malik Willis. I thought maybe they're going to learn like, oh, what we're doing isn't working. Maybe we should use this rushing quarterback to rush sometimes. And he had at least one early on good rush, and I was like, hell yeah, it's working out for me. This is exactly what I anticipated. Can play Malik Willis at captain without pass catchers. Maybe he's just going to keep doing this, and that did not happen. Seemed like he was just scrambling behind the line of scrimmage, running the wrong way every time he was trying to run, just like running back towards the wrong end zone. It was not fun.
No, it looked like it snapped the ball and no receivers are open. I don't know what to do. Right?
Yeah.
No receiver was open in a second and a half. Absolutely lost. Like just First read, that's it. Nothing else.
Yep. Hopefully he'll figure it out, but yeah, didn't
Well,
look
what does
good.
it matter? I don't care if he figures it out.
I mean, I don't really either. He's
Right.
not on my
Why do
team.
you have to be nice? Hopefully he'll figure it out. Who cares? What does it matter? It doesn't matter to me. Am I
Yeah,
rostering him? No. So what do I care if he figures it out? I'll play the defenses against him.
sure. Yeah, I suppose. Hopefully he doesn't figure it out. Just play the defense against him.
Right. Or not. Or if I'm not playing the defenses guy, I hope he figures it out a little bit, but not to the extent where he gets a lot of points, and not to the extent where the defense gets a lot of points.
Right.
You're just rooting for
That's-
whatever your selfish reason is. That's it.
I mean, that's true. Ultimately, I'm cheering for my monetary interest most of the time.
Right. Right. Didn't you, I listened to the Wiley episode, right? Like
Yep.
you recently had Wiley on. It's like when he said it's like, oh, I'm clicking the like button on your screenshot or whatever, but still it's like I'm not like excited like I'm not rooting for you, but it's not like okay, if it's not going to be me that wins, Neil's a nice guy, and
Yeah,
it's nice.
that's
to
how I
see
feel
him win.
about
Right,
a lot of people.
But the
Yeah,
people like, dude, I care about me first.
of course.
Right. If I see you
Yeah.
win, I'll be like, you know what would be better than this? If I fucking won.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, absolutely. Hopefully, I win, and then you win some other contest. Is generally the ideal thing. The people that I'm cheering for, I want you to win a contest that I'm not in
No.
with the same
No.
lineup that I'm winning the big contest in.
No, but that's not no. Truthfully, I'm rooting for the bad players to win.
That's a good point. That is better long term for us.
Right.
If the bad
Like
players win.
if I see the Colts, right? Oh,
Yeah.
he won the
Come
100K,
on,
whatever.
Steve.
I ain't getting that money.
Yeah,
Right? I want
Steve,
to
let some
see
bad players win sometimes.
I want to see, the random, Justin and 17 let numbers with the with no experience badge with one
Yeah.
lineup or whatever. Right?
I was hoping for a Justin Fields naked lineup to win yesterday. Like that'd be all right. Just somebody who has no correlation in their lineup, just a Justin Fields naked lineup. Looked like it was going to be optimal for a while. I was like, that'd be an all right Millie Maker winner. And then of course the guy with the double stack ends up winning, which I think was a good play. That was kind of
a fine
contrarian
lineup.
to play a double. Yeah.
Right. But I'm saying I want the bad players to
No.
win.
Yeah. No.
Right. So
I
I'm
agree.
actively rooting against you. It's just
Yeah.
like in showdown contests, right? If I don't win, I want the most dupe train to win.
Yeah. I want the circle jerk on Monday to be so large, worldwide circle jerk.
Should that be the title?
Worldwide circle jerk. I wouldn't. Yeah, that's a good title.
No, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's not good for YouTube, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good.
Right,
point.
you want the circle, right? When 468 way tie for first, it's like if I lose
Yeah.
the slate because of that, I'm perfectly fine, right?
Congrats. Yeah.
When you lose the slate because you're a 1v1 off of even a 3 dupe lineup that wins for you're like, I could have had that lineup.
Yep.
I could have had that lineup, right?
Yep.
Neil at Player Q DFS. So you're doing the high stakes podcast every other week now, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, probably going forward just every other week.
And you said Adam has still not come on.
Adam has still, he has said various times, oh, maybe I'll have to do the show now, jokingly in passing. I don't think that he has any real interest in doing the show, but maybe one day I'll get him on.
You can't get a person that's at Stochastic to do the interview show that
Yeah.
you do.
I mean, he is already salaried. He has no incentive to come on the show. It's just extra work for him. So,
But it's fun to talk about DFS.
I know. I agree. But
you get no salary for coming on this show.
True, and I enjoy talking about DFS. He came on this show too, but
Right? He came on this show before he came on your show.
Yeah, I know. I don't know.
That's
Doesn't
bad.
wanna
It's
come
not
on.
good team building.
I haven't asked him in a while. Maybe I'll ask him again at some point.
Right. Do people want to hear from him?
I think people do. People would love to. I mean, I've had several people. Why don't you have Adam on the show? Why don't you? So yes, people do want to hear from him.
Okay. So who your upcoming guests?
I don't think I have anybody lined up yet for next week.
Because you can't use
Yeah,
this backup plan anymore.
I know. Well, I can use so now I want to have.
You could always have me on again, but what the hell fuck's the point?
Yeah. No, I've got a few people. I think Greg would be willing to come on. Eric would be willing to come on. So I've got some stochastic guys that I want to have on at some point, and I haven't asked them because I'm like, well, I can use them as backups because I think those guys would be amenable to a short notice. But like, yeah, we can find some time. I save the guys that I know that I can count on. So.
Right. You open up your phone, you dial 1-800-EDDIE.
Been talking to Peter Overzet about trying to come on, but he's just very busy the days that we have been doing it. So maybe I'll have him on, try and reschedule for a different day one of these weeks.
So you're really broadening the definition of high stakes.
I mean, it was always kind of a misnomer. Like it was like I don't play high stakes. I never really planned for it to be just high stakes players.
So
Yeah,
why don't you just call it stakes?
that's a good. We could change
Just
the stakes.
stakes.
Yeah, harder to find, I guess. I don't know. That
Right.
was
Now you spell it with the EA and you just call it stakes.
ooh, I like that. Yeah,
Right? Or hot no,
maybe have a little
no,
steak while we're talking.
no, you have Alex on. You call it high stakes, but it's it's high stakes, and it's really a cooking show where Alex Baker and you cook steaks while you're smoking pot.
I love it. I'm in
Just
for
high
this show.
stakes.
Have you seen the video of, oh man, Baker? Alex had some video that he played between stochastic shows at one point that he made like 20 years ago, like college Alex doing some sort of baking or I can't remember. It was funny,
I
but
don't even know what you're talking. No, I
all right,
haven't
and
seen it.
I can't describe it well enough that anybody would be like, yes, I know what you're talking about. So I just remember the Baker's Dozen. He called it Baker's Dozen, and it was I wonder if it's on YouTube somewhere. But
Okay.
funny show from Alex a long time ago.
Okay.
Similar
So
concept.
let's get out of here. We have probably the worst slate in NBA DFS history tonight.
I'm not playing.
Yeah, dude, you took it right at like I looked at it and I said, I ain't doing this. I'm sorry. Like
Yeah,
I'm just
no.
like this has gone too far. Good, but it's the what the reason why it's the worst slate in NBA DFS history. Okay, it's 15 games, right? Because they're playing all the games because there's no games on election day.
Yep.
All the games. So that number one, you have 30 teams, all with the injury reports of questionables and whatever. So that's a pain in the ass, as it is, to have 30 teams to deal with like that. Okay, I could deal with that. Fine. You want to give me that pain in the ass? I could do it. But you know what the kicker is? All the games
timing?
start 15 minutes apart. Literally 7 o'clock,
Yeah.
7:15, 7:30, 7:45. So you will not get starting lineups or anything or news. Like it's not like if it was the type of thing of 5 games start at 7, 4 games start at 8, 4 games start at 9, then it like maybe I would have
Yeah.
considered in the waves.
The projections team better not go to the bathroom tonight because they need to
Right.
be at their computer at all times to update immediately in these 15-minute increments.
Right. So that's the reason why I feel so much better about myself. Right? I'm
Yeah.
not like Mangone. I'm not like a no days off type of person. I always say take slates off. You don't have to play all the slates or everything. But when I
Yeah.
saw this, I'm like, I mean, dude, it's a great slate for DFS having the most amount of teams and had so many combinations or whatever. But it's like, is that what I want to do? Like from 7 o'clock, like
I
from
mean, to be clear, the reason I'm not playing is because of NFL. I would 100% be playing this slate if not for NFL. But
oh,
I'm just
okay. So
like,
you're
I
just
can't do.
prioritizing
I'm going to be on
NFL.
the show. Yeah, yeah.
Now me,
I'm gonna.
even if there was no NFL tonight, I'd be like, fuck you with this 15-minute increment. Like
Yeah.
I ain't
It
doing
really
this.
takes up your entire night because you can't get away from your computer. You can't like really take a break, go have dinner. Like on usually NBA sites, like okay, after the first lock, there are sometimes games half an hour in, but usually you have the news before. You kind of have a little break before the next real
Right?
group of games
Typically
start
8
an hour
o'clock.
later.
Typically between like 8 and 10. There may be like one game that's at 9 or 9:30, but outside of
Yeah,
that, typically by 8 o'clock, more than half the games have locked, and it's like you're waiting on news in like the 3, 10, 10:30 games, and
yeah,
that's about. And you have like a nice an hour period of like you really don't have to look for anything. It's like okay, that's fine, but this is just stupid. Just like yeah, I get it for the NBA purpose, but for DFS purposes, it's just like no, fuck this. Like
yeah.
like I'll watch I don't even know if I'm going to make NFL lineups. Maybe I just take off tonight, right?
Oh wow,
Why? What's wrong with that?
nothing wrong with that.
No,
I'm
I do.
good.
No. The thing is, I do have props though.
Oh,
So
okay.
technically,
So you have something.
right. So I have something. Right. So I'm probably after this. I'm going to go and let's look at more, see if there's anything updated with all the news and stuff with Prize Picks and Underdog. I'll do that. Like that.
Yeah,
That's what I'll do. And then tomorrow, if you're listening to this before tomorrow or at tomorrow, whatever, go vote and vote Democrat. There you go. That's the. And they're going to be people like, I'm unsubscribing. Oh, I
Yeah,
can't.
you're it's some mad listeners.
Right? Who cares? They should.
Yeah,
They should already know.
they should know just
Right.
based on your timeline. I don't
I
really
mean,
post
I don't. I
politics.
mean, I'm not overly. I don't post
No,
overly political, anything
yeah,
like that. But yeah. But in talking to people, yeah, most people are idiots when it comes to voting or anything like that. I mean, because my wife's family members are the type like my family, different story, but it's hard to come around, Neil, to people that get welfare and food stamps and then vote Republican because they're against government handouts.
right.
Right. And
Yeah, it's a little bit
like you use more
hypocritical.
government programs than anyone
Yeah,
anyone else for most of your life. Like why are you getting and it's typically because well those other people are getting this that we're not getting.
yeah. It's people who have the concern of they don't want people to get things undeservingly. They care more about let's make sure that people don't cheat the system than like
Yeah,
find
but you're
stuff for
talking
people
about
in
people
need.
that cheat the system.
Yeah, and yeah,
But that's the thing. That's what always you're talking like my not to make this a political podcast or anything, but my argument is always when it's like, I don't like the student loan debt. It's like I don't like the fact that those people got bailed out and I didn't. I said, well, has the government? How about your food stamps? How about your Medicare? How your Medicaid? How about like, oh, well, those are things that I I I want. I want. I said
right,
so why don't you vote for the party that's more likely to give you more things, right? Yes, you're right. You didn't have any student loans because you didn't go to college, right? And these people are getting they're getting relief on that. So why don't you vote for the party that if they're going to give them relief, then next thing you know, you're going to get paid maternity leave when you have a baby. Next thing you know, you're going to get they're going to be more benefits for you rather than the party that's more likely. You know the benefits that you currently have? They want to take those away,
right,
right? So, oh, they would never take those away. No, that's literally their platform, right? So why are you voting against your own best interest? To the rich people, I don't blame. Right. My attitude is that if you're voting in your own best interests, I can't blame you even if I don't agree with
yeah.
them.
That's totally fine. Yeah,
Right. If you have a $50 million net worth and tons of real estate and blah 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 blah, and I want less taxes. I don't want to pay for the roads or the schools, or I don't have
yeah.
kids.
That makes
I don't want.
sense.
I can't argue that is your best interest. Right.
Right.
Right. It's selfish, but I can't blame you for that.
Yeah.
But it's the people that don't vote in their best interest that I how do you not vote in your own best interest? Like,
Yeah, they want to be part of that cult. They want to be part of the cult. Maybe that's their self-interest. Is
they're in
they
the
want to
bubble.
belong.
They're in the
They want to
bubble.
belong to that bubble. Yeah,
Right. They're in the bubble. They think you're not that special. Right? Your bubble
not
is
that
not that
special.
special.
That's right.
So go out and vote. You don't have to, but it's the more people that vote, the better it is typically. Yeah. And if you're not going to vote, and since there's no NBA DFS on election day, you might as well go and listen to the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports. It's a 15-hour audio DFS masterclass you can pick up at theoryofdfs.com.